My wife is charging me for eating the wrong snacks. I came home from a 10-hour shift at the warehouse and just wanted to sit on the couch and exist for a minute. My wife, Elena, was already in bed since she works the early shift at the hospital. I was starving because I skipped lunch to finish a big inventory count, so I went to the pantry to find something quick. I saw a box of those high-end organic granola bars she likes. There were 6 left, so I ate 2. I didn't think it was a big deal. We share everything, or at least I thought we did. We have a joint account for bills and separate accounts for personal spending, but groceries have always just been a shared expense that we switch off buying. The next morning, I woke up to a Venmo request for $12. The caption was just 2 granola bars plus convenience fee. I laughed because I thought she was joking. I went into the kitchen where she was drinking coffee and told her the joke was funny. She didn't look up from her phone. It wasn't a joke, she said. Those are my special snacks for my long shifts, and you know I have to drive 20 minutes out of the way to that specific health food store to get them. You used my gas, my time, and my food. I told her I would just buy her a new box on my way home, but she said that wasn't the point. She told me I was being disrespectful of her boundaries and her personal property. I reminded her that I bought the $50 ribeye steaks we ate for dinner 3 nights ago and didn't charge her a dime. She said that was a gift, and these granola bars were not. And I ended up just paying the $12 to avoid a fight before work, but it felt weird, like I was a guest in my own house. A few days later, I used some of her expensive shampoo because I ran out of my 3-in-1 stuff. I forgot about the granola bar thing and didn't think twice. That evening, another Venmo request hit my phone. $15 for luxury hair care usage. I lost it. I went into the living room and asked her if she was serious. She pulled out a notebook from her purse. She had a log of every time I used something she bought. 1 splash of her almond milk, a spoonful of her peanut butter, even using her high-quality tissues instead of the cheap ones I buy for the guest bathroom. She told me that since I make more money than her, I shouldn't be leeching off her smaller budget. I was floored. I pay 60% of the mortgage and all the utility bills. I pay for the streaming services and the car insurance for both our vehicles. If we were going to be petty about money, she was losing by a landslide. I told her fine. If this is how we are playing it, then we are going all the way. I spent the weekend setting up a system. I bought a small label maker and went to town. I labeled the milk, the bread, the eggs, and even the condiment bottles in the fridge. I put a sign on the laundry room door that said $1 per load for use of the washer and dryer I paid for. I put a jar on the coffee table with a note that said $5 for every hour of television watched on the 70-inch 4K TV I bought last Black Friday. Elena thought I was being dramatic until Sunday night. She wanted to watch her favorite medical drama. I sat on the chair next to her with my hand out. $5, I said. She rolled her eyes and tried to turn the TV on. I had changed the parental lock code. You can pay me through Venmo or cash, I told her. She started yelling that I was being a child. I told her I was just respecting the boundaries she set. If she wanted a transactional marriage, she was going to get one. She tried to do a load of laundry an hour later. I had put a heavy-duty bike lock through the handles of the front loaders. She came into my home office screaming. I didn't look up from my computer. That's a private workspace, I said. Entry fee is $10 per minute. She stood there with her mouth open, shaking with anger. I just kept typing. By Monday morning, she was completely silent. She tried to make coffee, but I had taken the espresso machine I bought to work with me. She had to stop at Starbucks and spent $7 on a latte. When I got home that afternoon, she had cleared out her shelf in the pantry. She bought a small dorm fridge and put it in the corner of the kitchen with a lock on it. We didn't speak for 3 days. We lived like hostile roommates. I would cook my dinner, eat it alone, and wash my single plate. She would do the same. It was miserable, but I wasn't going to be the one to break first. I wasn't going to let her charge me for a granola bar while I paid for the roof over her head. The breaking point happened on Thursday. Her car wouldn't start. She has an older SUV that I usually maintain, but I had stopped checking her oil or tire pressure as part of the new rules. She came to me looking defeated. I need a ride to the hospital, she said. I'm going to be late for my shift. I looked at my watch. My car is a premium vehicle, I said. The base fare for a ride to the hospital is $25 plus $2 per mile. She started crying. She said I was a monster and that she couldn't believe I would treat my wife this way. I asked her how it was different from the $12 granola bars. She said it was different because she was in a bind and I was supposed to love her. I told her love doesn't usually come with a convenience fee, but she was the one who set the price list. She ended up calling an Uber, which cost her $40 because of surge pricing. That night, I found her notebook on the kitchen counter. She had written down a list of things she wanted to talk about. It wasn't just about the money. Apparently, her sister had been whispering in her ear about how men use women for their labor and resources. Her sister is twice divorced and bitter, and Elena had let that poison our relationship. She thought that by charging me for small things, she was taking her power back. I sat her down and we finally had it out. I showed her a spreadsheet of the last 6 months of our bills. I showed her exactly how much I contribute versus how much she does. I told her I never minded paying more because I love her and I want us to have a good life, but I wouldn't be her piggy bank and her landlord at the same time. She cried and apologized, saying she didn't realize how lopsided the numbers actually were. She promised to stop the Venmo requests and the logging. We spent the rest of the night taking the labels off the food and the locks off the appliances. It felt like we were finally breathing again. I thought we were back to normal. Then this morning, I went to use the guest bathroom because she was in the master one. I reached for the hand towel and noticed a small handwritten tag pinned to the corner. It said, "Property of Elena, 5 cents per wipe." I walked into the bedroom to confront her, and she was standing there holding a granola bar with a huge smirk on her face. She told me it was a joke this time, but I'm still keeping the label maker in my nightstand just in case. The silence that followed that joke was heavy, but not in the way it had been before. It was a cautious, vibrating silence. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, looking at her, really looking at her for the first time in a week. Her scrubs were wrinkled at the knees, her hair was pulled back in a messy bun that had seen better days, and she looked exhausted. The hospital had been running them ragged, but there she was, holding that damn $12 granola bar like a peace offering, or maybe a white flag wrapped in foil. "You think you're funny?" I said, my voice low. I wasn't angry anymore, just drained. The adrenaline of the war had worn off, leaving behind a cold realization of how close we'd come to the edge. "I think I'm hilarious," she countered, but her smirk wavered. She took a bite of the bar, chewed slowly, and then held the rest out to me. 50 cents for the bite? Or should we just call it even for the towel wipe? I didn't take a bite. I walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. "Elena, why did you actually listen to Sarah? You know her marriage didn't end because of granola bars. It ended because they stopped being a team," she sighed, the playful energy draining out of her. She sat sat down next to me, the bed creaking under her weight. The room smelled like her lavender laundry detergent, the one I'd started charging her extra to use. It wasn't just Sarah, Mark. It was everything. I go to work and I see patients who have nothing. I come home and I feel like I'm drowning in a house I can't afford on my own. You pay for the mortgage, the cars, the insurance. I started feeling like I didn't own anything here. Not the walls, not the furniture. I felt like I was living in your life, not our life. Sarah just, she gave me a way to feel like I had something that was strictly mine. So you chose granola bars and shampoo? I asked, incredulous. Elena, I never once made you feel like this wasn't your home. I've never held the mortgage over your head. You don't have to, she whispered. The numbers do it for you. Every time a bill comes and you just handle it with a wave of your hand, it reminds me that if you left, I couldn't stay. It's a power dynamic, whether you intend it to be or not. I wanted to feel like I had some leverage. It was stupid. It was petty. And seeing that bike lock on the washing machine, God, Mark, we looked like people on a reality show about a failing marriage. I looked down at my hands. The skin was rough from the warehouse, a few new nicks from moving pallets of heavy machinery parts. Oh, I hated every second of it, I admitted. Locking the TV, taking the espresso machine. I felt like a jailer. But when you sent me that Venmo for the shampoo, it felt like you were stripping away the last bit of intimacy we had. Like I was just some guy renting a room from you. We sat there for a long time. The hum of the refrigerator, the one I'd once labeled Mark's cooling unit, audible through the open door. It's funny how quickly you can turn a sanctuary into a battlefield. I'm sorry about the ride to the hospital, I said quietly. That was low. I knew you were stressed. I deserved it, she said, though she winced at the memory. The Uber driver was weird anyway. He kept talking about his lizard collection. It cost me $40 to hear about a bearded dragon named Steve. I chuckled, and the tension finally snapped. I leaned over and bumped my shoulder against hers. Look, we need to fix the your life versus my life thing. If you feel like a guest, then we aren't doing the joint account right. Maybe we need to restructure. Put everything into one pot, and we both get an equal allowance for personal stuff, no matter who earns what. Elena looked at me, her eyes searching mine. You do that, even though you bring in almost double what I do? Elena, I'm not working 10-hour shifts for a bank account. I'm working them for us. If the money is making you feel small, then the money is the problem, not the granola bars. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I'd like that. I want to feel like a partner again, not a tenant. I reached into my nightstand and pulled out the label maker. I held it up like a trophy. In the spirit of our new agreement, I typed something in, the machine whirring as it printed a long strip of sticky plastic. I peeled it off and reached over, sticking it right onto the front of her scrubs over her heart. It read, "Property of us." She laughed, a real, genuine laugh that reached her eyes. That's incredibly cheesy, Mark, and probably a violation of the hospital dress code. Well, if they fire you, I guess the us account will just have to cover it, I said. We went downstairs together. The house still felt a little scarred. There were sticky remnants of labels on the fridge handles, and the bike lock was sitting on the kitchen counter like a discarded weapon. I started making a pot of coffee, regular coffee, not the fancy espresso, while she started clearing the guest bathroom of her paper white tag. As I watched her move around the kitchen, I realized how close we'd come to a point of no return. It starts with a snack, then a shampoo bottle, then a ride to work, and before you know it, you're dividing the towels in a divorce settlement. Sarah's influence had been a catalyst, but the underlying issue was our failure to talk about the weight of our financial gap. She came back into the kitchen with a handful of little paper tags and tossed them in the trash. I'm going to call my sister later, she said. I think I need to tell her to stop giving me advice. Her life is a mess for a reason. Probably a good idea, I agreed. Just then, my phone buzzed on the counter. I picked it up, expecting a work notification. Instead, it was a Venmo notification. Elena has sent you $12. Caption, refund for being a crazy person. I love you. I looked up at her. She was leaning against the counter, biting her lip. I thought it was a good way to close the books, she said. I didn't send it back. Instead, I opened the app and requested $50. Caption, emotional damages and one very expensive hug. She rolled her eyes, but her phone pinged immediately. She accepted the request before I could even put my phone down. You're expensive, Mark, she teased, walking over and wrapping her arms around my waist. High maintenance, I corrected, pulling her close. But I think I'm worth the investment. We stood there for a while, just holding each other in the quiet of the morning. No labels, no logs, no fees. Just a husband and a wife trying to remember how to be a we again. The warehouse shift was going to be long, and the hospital would probably be a madhouse for her. But for those 20 minutes, the world outside our walls didn't have a price tag. By the way, I whispered into her hair, I actually did buy more of those granola bars. They're in the trunk of my car. Are they for me? She asked. No, I said, grinning. They're for us, but if you eat the last one without asking, I might have to reconsider that ride to work tomorrow. Fair enough, she laughed. Fair enough. The weeks that followed were a slow exercise in dismantling the defenses we'd built. It's easy to start a war, but cleaning up the rubble takes a lot more focus. We sat down on a Tuesday night, not with a notebook of grievances, but with a bottle of wine and a single laptop to merge our lives properly. We decided to scrap the 60-40 split, or it was the math of roommates, not a marriage. We moved everything into a singular joint account. My warehouse salary, her hospital pay, it all went into one bucket. We set up 2 smaller, identical transfers to our personal accounts for fun money. Whether I pulled a double shift or she had a week of overtime, the personal allowance stayed the same. It removed the hierarchy. I wasn't the provider, and she wasn't the dependent. We were just 2 people working toward the same retirement, the same vacations, the same life. But even with the paperwork handled, the ghost of the granola bar war lingered in the way we moved around the house. I caught myself one afternoon standing in front of the pantry, reaching for a bag of expensive jerky she bought. I froze. My hand hovered over the bag, and for a split second, my brain calculated the cost per ounce and the potential Venmo request. I actually felt a spike of anxiety. I ended up closing the pantry door and drinking a glass of water instead. Elena noticed. She was sitting at the kitchen island, charting notes for a patient. She didn't look up, but she knew. Mark, she said softly, eat the jerky. I'm not even that hungry, I lied. She closed her laptop and walked over. She grabbed the bag, ripped it open, and held a piece to my mouth. We're not doing the permission thing anymore. If I bought it, it's because I wanted us to have it. I don't want you hesitating in your own kitchen. I chewed the jerky, feeling a bit foolish. It's a hard habit to break. I spent a week thinking of every item in this house as a potential line item on a bill. Me too, she admitted, leaning against the counter. Every time I go to the hospital and use the employee microwave, I have this weird urge to check if I owe someone $1 for electricity. It's going to take a while to feel normal. The real test came a month later. Elena's car, the same SUV that had left her stranded during our standoff, finally gave up the ghost. The transmission was shot. The repair bill was $4,000, more than the car was even worse. Old Elena would have panicked. She would have felt the weight of her smaller savings account and the shame of asking me for help. Old Mark would have viewed it as a loan or a gift that came with unspoken strings. We sat at the table, looking at the mechanic's estimate. We shouldn't fix it, I said, looking at the numbers. Elena looked down at her lap. I know, but I don't have enough in my personal account for a down payment on something else. Not without, I reached across the table and took her hand. The US account has the down payment, Elena. We've been saving for a rainy day. Well, it's pouring. We'll go to the dealership on Saturday and find something reliable. She looked up, her eyes slightly glassy. Are you sure? That's a lot of money. Most of that came from your bonuses. It came from our life, I corrected. I'm not giving you a car. We are buying a vehicle so my wife can get to work safely. End of story. The ride to the dealership was quiet, but it was a peaceful quiet. We ended up picking out a certified pre-owned crossover. When it came time to sign the papers, the finance manager asked whose name should be on the title. Both, we said at the same time. That evening, we pulled into the driveway with a new car. Elena spent 20 minutes just sitting in the driver's seat, adjusting the mirrors and familiarizing herself with the dash. When she finally came inside, she looked lighter than I'd seen her in months. She walked straight to the pantry, grabbed a box of the high-end granola bars, and threw them on the counter. What's this? I asked, laughing. A celebration, she said, ripping the box open and handing me one. No convenience fee, no luxury usage tax, just a snack between two people who actually like each other. I took a bite. It tasted like a normal granola bar. Oats, honey, and a little bit of chocolate. But as I looked at Elena, who was leaning against her new US car through the window, I realized it was the best thing I'd tasted in years. The label maker is still in the nightstand. I haven't touched it in months, but I think I'll keep it there. Not as a threat, but as a reminder of what happens when you start putting a price on the things that should be priceless. Sometimes you have to see the cost of losing everything to realize that the small stuff isn't worth a dime. The new car was a turning point, but the real test of our new deal came during the holidays. Usually, Christmas was a stressful negotiation of whose family got the most time and whose budget was being stretched thinner for gifts. In the past, we'd kept a mental tally. I spent $300 on her parents, so she should spend at least $200 on mine. It was exhausting. This year, the one who sat down with the laptop in early December. We have a fixed budget for the holidays, I told her, and showing her the US Savings subfolder. No stress, no tracking. We buy what we want for the people we love until the bucket is empty. Elena looked at the screen, then at me. I'm actually looking forward to it for once. No secret spreadsheets? No spreadsheets, I promised. But life has a way of poking at old wounds. About a week before Christmas, Elena's sister Sarah came over for dinner. I could tell the second she walked through the door that she was looking for a fight. She had that sharp, predatory look in her eyes, the kind of look someone gets when they're miserable and can't stand seeing someone else at peace. We were in the middle of a nice dinner, pot roast I'd slow cooked all day, when Sarah gestured to the new car in the driveway. So, Elena, Sarah said, swirling her wine, now how long do you have to work the night shifts to pay Mark back for the favor of a reliable vehicle? The air in the room went cold. I felt my grip tighten on my fork, that old warehouse temper simmering just below the surface. I waited for Elena to defend us, to explain the joint account, the partnership, the property of us stickers. Elena took a slow sip of her water. She didn't look flustered. I don't have to pay him back, Sarah. It's my car. It's our car. We don't do favors here anymore. We just live, Sarah scoffed. That's how it starts. First it's a car, then it's a house, and then you're 20 years deep with no assets of your own because you shared everything with a man who could walk away tomorrow. You need to keep your own pile, Elle. Don't let him absorb your labor. I looked at Sarah, then back at my wife, and I was ready to pull out the actual spreadsheet this time to show this woman that I was the one who had been absorbed for years, and I didn't care because I loved her sister. But Elena beat me to it. She stood up, walked over to the pantry, and pulled out a single granola bar. She walked over to Sarah and set it down on the table next to her wine glass. That bar costs $2 at the health food store, Elena said calmly. It's organic, non-GMO, and very expensive. Last year, I would have charged Mark $12 for eating it because I was listening to people like you. I was so busy counting pennies and protecting my pile that I almost lost the person who makes the pile worth having. Sarah looked at the granola bar like it was a live grenade. I'm just trying to protect you. Then protect me by being happy for me, Elena said. Because if you mention labor or debts in this house one more time, I'm going to have to charge you a fee for the dinner you're currently eating. And trust me, I'm very good at calculating interest. I had to cough into my napkin to hide my grin. Sarah left shortly after, and for the first time in our marriage, the silence she left behind wasn't heavy. It was clean. Later that night, as we were cleaning up the kitchen, I caught Elena looking at the label maker. I'd left it on the counter after using it to organize some files for the US account. You thinking about bringing back the tax system? I joked, bumping her hip with mine. She picked up the machine and typed something in. She waited for the click, peeled the sticker off, and then walked over to the fridge. She didn't put it on a milk carton or a bottle of mustard. She walked over to the framed photo of our wedding day that hangs over the small breakfast nook. She stuck the label right on the bottom of the frame. Not for sale. I think we're good, Mark, she said, leaning her head against my chest. The books are balanced. I held her there in the middle of our kitchen, under the roof we both paid for, in the life we both built. There are still days when I think about that $12 granola bar. Sometimes when I'm at the grocery store, I buy an extra box just to see her smile when I put them in the pantry. It wasn't about the snacks. It was never about the snacks. It was about the price of admission to a real partnership. And as it turns out, that price isn't something you can send through an app. You pay it every day in trust, in shared bank accounts, and in the quiet realization that you'd rather be losing money together than winning it alone. I haven't seen a Venmo request from her in 6 months, but every now and then I'll find a little note in my lunch bag. No numbers, no fees, just a heart and a simple reminder. Save me a bite. The true test of our new us philosophy didn't come from a bill or a sister-in-law, but from a Tuesday in late February when the heating unit in the basement decided to give up the ghost during a record-breaking cold snap. I came home to find Elena huddled in 3 blankets, the thermostat reading a miserable 12 degrees Celsius. I headed straight for the basement, tools in hand, while she followed with a flashlight. We stood in front of the massive silent machine. In the old days, I would have been calculating the repair cost in my head, wondering how to ask her to chip in for a house expense that felt like my responsibility because I made more. But this time, I just looked at her. It's dead, I said, wiping grease onto my jeans. We need a whole new unit. It's going to be at least $6,000. Elena didn't even flinch. She just tucked a blanket tighter around her shoulders. Check the US emergency fund. If it's short, we'll take a little from our fun money accounts for the next 2 months. We'll sleep in the living room by the fireplace tonight. We did exactly that. We dragged the mattress into the living room, and for the first time in years, the house felt like a campsite site rather than a collection of assets. How we shared a single bowl of pasta, made with her expensive gluten-free noodles and my jar of marinara, and watched the embers. Mark? She whispered into the dark, the fire casting long shadows across the ceiling. Yeah? I'm glad we stopped counting. Me too, I said. I think I was becoming a person I didn't like. Someone who saw his wife as a ledger entry, and I saw you as a threat to my independence, she admitted. Sarah was wrong. Independence isn't about having your own wall of granola bars. It's about knowing that if the heater breaks, or the car dies, or the world ends, you aren't standing there alone with a calculator. The next day, the HVAC guys arrived. When they handed me the final invoice, I didn't feel that sharp pang of resentment. I just swiped the joint card, signed the paper, and thanked them. A week later, then I found a small box on my pillow when I got home from the warehouse. Inside was a new high-quality leather wallet. It was beautiful, soft, dark brown, and clearly not cheap. Inside the ID slot was a small, laminated piece of paper. It wasn't a Venmo request. It was a photo of us from our first anniversary, looking young and slightly overwhelmed, but happy. On the back, she had written, "No convenience fee, no luxury tax, just because I love you." I put my cards into the new wallet, feeling the weight of it in my pocket. It felt solid. I walked into the kitchen where Elena was humming to herself, finally using the espresso machine I'd brought back from the office months ago. She handed me a cup without me asking, the steam rising between us. "I'm going to the store later," I said, leaning against the counter. Do you need anything special? Those granola bars? The fancy shampoo?" She smiled, a real, effortless smile that made the last year of bickering feel like a lifetime ago. "Just get whatever looks good, Mark. We'll figure it out when you get back." I realized then that the label maker was probably out of batteries by now, buried under some old mail in the nightstand. I didn't need it anymore. The boundaries weren't drawn in plastic tape or Venmo requests. They were held together by the simple, quiet understanding that in this house, everything belonged to both of us, or it didn't belong at all. I finished my coffee, kissed her on the forehead, and headed out the door. As I pulled out of the driveway in our shared car, I saw a single, faded sticker on the corner of the mailbox. It was a remnant from my label maker rampage, a tiny strip that said, "Property of," but the name had been scratched off. I didn't stop to peel it away. The rain would wash it off eventually. For now, it was enough to know that whatever followed that didn't matter, as long as it ended with us.